Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for attending this. It's really, really heartening to see a group of this many dedicated individuals really working to tackle these difficult issues. And thank you, of course, Rep. Murphy, for the invitation and for putting this together. It's great to see that we, 4 years in, are continuing this proud tradition. It's a little bit disheartening to see that it's still necessary, of course, but our rights aren't things that simply maintain themselves. It's required actively for us to defend our rights to free speech and the rights of free speech for every student, as well as faculty member and staff and administrator on college campuses. As a few folks have already said, I find myself relatively hopeful this year, though. The ideological stratification that we've been seeing on college campuses has really only been possible because of the public's ignorance and their misplaced trust in higher education. While occasionally we see egregious cases making their way onto the public consciousness, say, for instance, Casey Johnson's tenure denial and infamous water buffalo incidents, by and large, policymakers and the public have been unaware of the vast sensorial machines that colleges and universities have been building up to police free speech, enforce censorship, and maintain ideological hegemony in the name of protecting and supporting their students. We at the American Council of Trustees and Alumni, or ACTA, we are an independent, nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to safeguarding academic freedom, as well as free speech on campus, academic excellence, as well as accountability in higher education. We've been monitoring this trend for quite some time, as I'm sure that many of us here have been, and I'm sure that many of us have been frustrated by that lack of attention that these issues have been given. So it's, again, heartening to see these things start to more migrate into that public consciousness. Previously, whenever ACTA would speak with trustees, administrators, or policymakers, the first thing that we'd hear about the worst excesses of this campus illiberalism was that, well, that can't happen here. It doesn't happen here, and it won't happen here. I've personally seen lobbyists from large public institutions use this argument to kill their state legislators' bipartisan bills to safeguard the rights of teachers and students on campus. This excuse has now lost all credibility, while calls for transparency have broad bipartisan support. ACTA has explored the pretense on several campuses by doing surveys of their students large enough to capture the experiences of both conservative, liberal, as well as religious subgroups. And again, as Kenny, as you just mentioned, there's really been a clear indication that this is not something that a single student subgroup is experiencing, but rather this is something that's broadly felt by students across the ideological spectrum. Now, it is important to note that these issues did not begin this year, nor did they begin in the past decade. For example, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, or OCR, recently settled 9 complaints made against the City University of New York, or CUNY, New York City's public university system. One of these published complaints alleged that anti-Semitic harassment on CUNY campuses has become so commonplace as to be almost normalized, and lists several incidents dating as far back as 2013. Indeed, when Lawrence Summers was president of Harvard, he admonished the community about the growth of campus anti-Semitism over 22 years ago. So these issues have a long historical trend, and I'm happy to see that they're starting to get introduced again and starting to make their way onto the public consciousness. As you said very aptly, Rep. Murphy, sunlight is the best disinfectant here, and I'm really interested in listening to a lot of the folks here, particularly our alumni groups at APSFA that have been doing phenomenal work outside of campus, as well as students that have been doing phenomenal work on campus. I can't wait to see this alliance, this group of like-minded and dedicated individuals trying to do their best to improve American higher education, because ultimately that's what we're all here for.